I gotta say, on a personal note, as president of Fuel for Truth, I pride myself on knowing as much as possible about these issues. In the last hour, I learned a lot of things I did not know before. I hope that the Iranium funds support, we can use this in our boot camp to show our new members. For those of you who don't know, boot camp is a 10-week program that focuses on educating young Americans about the facts in the Middle East and Israel's role, so they can effectively advocate on behalf of Israel and the United States. Right now we're going to open it up to a Q&A, but before that, I just want to know something. How many people in this room know somebody who needs to see this film? Everybody. Good. So, I expect you all to go out. It's online. It's free. Show this to your friends. Show this to your family. Very, very important that they know what you know. Now, some of you may be a little scared. Some of you may be a little bit nervous. I hope that you're empowered to take action. I hope that you're ready to stand up and do something. For too long, too many of us know too much and do too little. As I said in the film, the time is now. The time is now to take action. The time is now to do something. So let me ask, does anybody have any ideas? What can we do? As regular people, what can we do?
We need a tea card.
Okay.
Hard, part of Iran, destroyed Iran, and all of forget, not another word needs to be said. It's that the staggering amount of evidence here, and the over 30 years, and the lack of action by leadership all over the free world is just a disgrace. What are they there for? What is the purpose of the free world leadership? It's just a disgrace. It's embarrassing. I mean, what do we send all these taxes to Washington for? You know, talk about, and the UN is a pathetic joke. I mean,
I agree with you, and Alex, I think you hit your mark.
I think it's more frightening thing when it's in the first 5 minutes of this movie. That could have been like you just slipped in.
Like looking in a mirror.
Well, no, it's Egypt.
Yeah.
It's exactly
It's all happening again.
And they have their tentacles not only in Egypt, not only in Minnesota, and in Washington, and Florida. They are affecting us not with weapons, but with intellect. They're affecting the communities, they're affecting the colonies, they're getting us to our minds. To our children's minds.
Okay, guys, unfortunately, we are very, very short on time. So what I'd like to do right now is bring up the director, Alex, who will answer some of your questions. Anyone have a question for Alex?
Absolutely. The question is about Stuxnet and if there's an addendum to this film. The truth of the matter is that those of you that have been watching the news over the past several weeks understand that this film could be continuously updated. And the second we closed the film was the next moment that something new happened that we had to put in. Stuxnet virus is something that is, on the one hand, very exciting in the sense that we are fighting a problem of nuclear importance with cyber warfare, with software. And that's something that should be very encouraging to... Is that better? Okay. So Stuxnet's exciting because we're fighting a nuclear problem with software. I mean, this is really, the 21st century here. We're literally trying to turn swords into plowshares and vice versa with computer viruses. It's something that's unbelievable. However, I would caution everybody in this room that statements that came out of the mouths of Secretary Clinton, as well as even the Israeli outgoing Mossad chief, Amir Dagan, which stated that we have, in fact, set back Iran's nuclear program 3 to 5 years that those statements are extremely dangerous. And I think that those statements are being made to lull the American people, as well as the rest of the free world, into a sense of security that I don't think exists. Quite frankly, we have misread the nuclear development of the Iranian regime for the last several years, if not a decade. And to believe now that we know every nuclear facility that Iran has, and to think that we can state with certainty that Iran will not cross the nuclear threshold for 3 to 5 years, I think is a little bit optimistic. There are some people that we've spoken to while making this film that have suggested that Iran may already sit on a small cache of nuclear weapons, whether they developed them themselves, whether they got them from North Korea, from Pakistan, from the Soviet Union after hundreds of missiles went missing after the fall of that empire. So I think that we need to recognize that Stuxnet is great, but there's a lot more that we need to do in order to prevent Iran from crossing the nuclear threshold. Sure.
I think it's very simplistic to say we're going to go to military action against Iran, because if that was the case, we should have done it instead of going against Iraq. And going into Iraq didn't really produce the results that were intended. It didn't produce a successful, stable society, which was the goal. We created a civil war, which I think may continue to proliferate across the Middle East, especially now with the revolutions that are taking place. Perhaps the best way is what Israel is trying to do with developing technology to get us off of oil, which will get us off of the money that funds a lot of this. It's not a complete answer, because how quickly that can happen, but perhaps if at least we started with...
Okay, it sounds like you're trying to allude to 4 or 5 questions. And I will ask that people try to keep it to 1 question. However, you raise a couple of important points, and I do want to address them. First of all, when the United States went into Iraq, and I've heard this from experts in the film like Bernard Lewis, who is really the preeminent expert on Middle Eastern studies in the world today. He's 94 years old. He's published over 30 books on the subject. He said that when America went into Iraq, that there were Iranians holding up signs on the roofs of their homes saying, "America, please tackle your enemies in alphabetical order." Now, I think that we have to understand that bringing democracy to countries that are not used to democracy takes time. To believe that we could have just moved into Iraq and not had the situation that we were in today perhaps was a little bit optimistic. And there are many people that suggest that Iraq is a better place today than it was back 8 years ago before we started. And I think that you can see that because as revolutions are sweeping across the Middle East, and you see that the pot is really boiling. Because when you're in a brutal dictatorship and there are no outlets for freedom of speech, no outlets for protest, what happens is the pressure continues to build and continues to build and continues to build until suddenly the pot, the cover flies right off of the pot. And that's what's happening in Tunisia, that's what's happening in Egypt. Similar currents are happening today in Syria as well as Jordan, but it's not happening in Iraq. So we have to ask ourselves why. I think I'm probably missing something. Oh, the most important thing that you mentioned that I want to address is that the people that are funding this regime is us. And we have to understand that. Even though we are not directly importing Iranian oil to the United States, as you saw in the film, China is one of the leading importers of Iranian oil. Well, the majority of the goods that are in your homes are produced in China. So you're relying on Iranian oil every day in order to live your lives. And oil is really a strategic commodity in the sense that it doesn't matter where you get oil from. If you get it from one place, you're getting it. And if somebody's supplying it, they're getting money for it. So we've got to get very serious about alternative energy, because once we do, it's going to put not only the Iranian regime out of business, but other repressive regimes like the Saudis and others that are profiting off of our consumption of oil. Yes?
We have a huge supply of oil in this country that we are prohibited from developing. We have one of the largest deposits in North Dakota and Montana, back in Williston, Missouri. We have perhaps the world's largest supply of natural gas, which we, by our government, are prohibited prohibited from developing oil. It is not a problem about oil. It's a problem about where the oil is and where we are allowed to develop it.
I would caution that it's not completely correct. Yes, we could produce more oil. However, the rest of the world's oil supply is controlled by a cartel that wants to limit the supply to the rest of the world. So what we really need to do is to use oil. Oil is a very valuable commodity, but it can't be the only one. We can't rely directly and solely on oil. Go ahead.
Oh, well, if you understand the technology of it, we have no choice. The alternatives are too far away. Solar can't do a thing. I don't want to get into detail, but if you look at the science of it, some of it is just basic laws of science, basic principles of the universe. It's going to be impossible, a lot of these alternative dreams. But nuclear is the only one. Nuclear is the only one. And one more comment to your thing of yours. What breaks up a cartel? Competition. What he said is correct. The amount of oil we have in the United States, the deposits we have, are like 8 times what's in the Middle East.
Okay.
And we have enough to go into competition with them and put them out of business, supply all our oil needs, and export oil as we were doing in the 1950s.
Okay, I would like to keep this to questions. Please, questions.
That will put them out of business, okay.
Thank you. Questions? Sure, go ahead.
I just have a quick question. I was wondering, first of all, fantastic work. It was very, a lot of, I really appreciate that. I was wondering if also maybe, as time rolls on, I heard this from your CNN and Fox that America waited 3 weeks, the administration condemned when Iran suppressed their revolution. They waited 24 hours. So basically let Iran knock out the revolution. It was on the ground. And as soon as it rose in Egypt, they didn't let Mubarak have any flexibility. So I was wondering, when time rolls out, that foreign policy, have you given any thought to how that translates?
Well,
what would you think that if Mubarak was an ally?
okay. Well, I'm going to try to interpret the question.
The question is, it really seems like America empowered the Iranians to stay in power by letting Ahmadinejad crush and kill, open fire on his citizens. They didn't let that happen in Tunisia or Egypt.
Well, perhaps on the one hand they learned from their mistakes in 2009, but the truth of the matter is that I cannot understand myself what goes through the minds of President Obama and his advisors. But I will tell you that his actions are no worse than the actions of the presidents that preceded him in dealing with this problem. It has been successive administrations, including Democrats and Republicans, that have led us to this point today, and we've got to come to a quick reevaluation of our policies, especially when you consider actions that are taking place today in the Middle East. Revolutions that took months to unfold in late 1978 and 1979 are unfolding in a matter of days and weeks today in the Middle East, as we see in Egypt. The Middle East is a tinderbox right now, and a revolutionary wave is sweeping across the region. The same thing can happen in Iran on a day's notice, but we have got to be prepared for that moment, and we've got to make sure that we put our chips behind the right players.
Guys,